This is Protected Thoughts from the Intellectual Property Team at McBrayer. This is an overview of state or federal law and regulation and does not constitute legal advice. Services may be performed by others. For more information, visit mcbrayerfirm.com.
Hi, I'm Pete Rosine, and I'm here with my two friends and colleagues, Bruce and Mary Elise Paul, and this is Protected Thoughts, where we talk about the legal landscape of intellectual property, from trademarks to copyrights to patents and much, much more. Today, I thought it'd be fun to talk about the movies and their interaction with rights of publicity and deceased actors showing up in film. I saw a movie over the last week with one of our colleagues, and it was Alien Romulus. And it features a beloved actor, Ian Holm, who is no longer with us. You may know him as Bilbo Baggins from the Lord of the Rings films, directed by Peter Jackson, and the first Alien movie from 1979, which is directed by Ridley Scott, in which he co-stars as an android named Ash, alongside Sigourney Weaver, Tom Skerritt, John Hurt, Harry Dean Stanton, and some others who make up the crew of the doomed cargo ship, the Nostromo. We'll be discussing that later in the show, but first I want to ask, how are you all doing today?
Doing fine. How are you?
Doing great. Can't wait to be podcasting with you all.
Feeling disqualified to be talking about this topic.
I mean, you guys have seen Alien, right? At least you've seen one of the Alien movies.
No, definitely not.
What?
The original, because I'm that old.
But scary movies. Does this count as a scary movie?
I would say the first one counts as a scary movie. Yes.
Yeah, but it's good. It's very good.
But it's scary.
And we're on the eve of Halloween season, so it's perfect for us.
There you go.
We should set up a viewing.
We should. I agree with that.
for Mary Elise's sake, at least.
I think I have to wash my hair that night.
Fair enough. All right. Well, let's get into it then. So, Alien Romulus, it's a 2024 film directed by Fede Alvarez and stars Kaylee Spaney and David Johnson. The film follows a group of young orphan colonists on a mining planet run by the evil Weyland-Yutani Corporation. The Weyland-Yutani Corporation is typically sort of the background villain of all of the films, just for your FYI, since you have been living under a rock and haven't seen this movie. So they're trying to escape this mining planet, and they've got to take this vessel up into space, into orbit, and they're trying to get to basically a ship that's orbiting the planet, and they're getting cryo tubes, so they're able to leave this planet and go to a much further away planet and be able to survive the journey. And as the title suggests, this does not work out very well for them, because the ship that's up in orbit harbors an alien. Actually, it's the alien from the first movie, because Alien Romulus fits in between the first Alien movie and Aliens, the James Cameron movie. You guys, have you seen that one, Bruce?
Negative.
You've never seen the second Alien movie?
No. I mean,
Who am I podcasting with right now?
How old would I have been? What year was that?
That was, that's a great question. Probably something that I should have put in the research. It was in the 80s.
It's okay.
It was in the 80s.
The 80s?
Yeah.
So you're asking me if I watched a movie 40 years ago?
I mean,
maybe?
You've seen the first Alien movie.
Right.
So, that was 1979.
So wait a minute. We're talking about a movie that was made 40 years later that came between the first and the second. Can't imagine how people would have died in that time.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, they meet a xenomorph on this spaceship, spoiler alert, and they've got to find their way out. So we know that neither of you really have much experience with this topic, but the interesting thing for our purposes is Ian Holm, who is deceased, and he died in 2020. He shows up in the movie, not as his original character, but as another android. It's a clear callback to the first movie. So I think that this is, whenever I had seen the movie, I thought, perfect topic for the podcast. We're talking about somebody who is no longer able to appear in movies and yet plays, frankly, a pretty significant role in the film. I mean, there's a lot of screen time for this character, and he's digitally recreated to be an android. So this isn't the first time that this has happened, where studios or music producers have brought characters back to life through movie magic. So one of the ones that first came to mind, other than Alien Romulus, is 2016 Star Wars Rogue One. Peter Cushing, who passed away in 1994, reprised his original role that he had done in the 1977 original Star Wars movie.
Go ahead, ask me how I watch the Star Wars movies.
Please tell me that you've seen a Star Wars.
Part of one?
Any of them.
Part of one.
Do you even recall the title of which one it was?
No.
Oh my gosh.
Bruce Wars. Do you recall the title of which one I might have watched?
You didn't watch it with me.
Yes, I did. With Alex and Emily, you all like them, so I sat through part of one. Maybe fell asleep. That's what I'm saying, part of one.
Yeah, you exhibit real joy in it.
This is infuriating.
Rogue One is excellent.
I agree. Rogue One.
Seen that one?
Nope. I've only seen that.
2016.
I've only seen it in a movie theater. Did you go to a movie theater and watch it?
No.
Negative.
Okay, well, maybe we watched one in preparation for you all to see that.
Yeah, we'll watch them all tonight.
No.
Bruce, surely you have seen at least one Star Wars movie.
All of them, I'm sure.
I believe all of them, as well as all of the Disney subsequent miniseries.
Really?
Yeah.
I've been to Star Wars Land in Disney World.
I've missed. That's what I've missed. I've not been to that one. I haven't seen a lot of the television shows that have been spun off from Star Wars, but I hear some of them are good and some of them are terrible. You've got to be in a Star Wars frame of mind. I like them. I like them all. I mean, I think they're great. Mm-hmm. But yeah, some are better than others. Yeah, I think it's a pretty spotty series in a lot of ways, but the highs are super high. I mean, the first trilogy is so good, and Empire Strikes Back is a favorite of mine. But yeah, Rogue One is fantastic. I mean, we could go off on a tangent, but what is not a novel idea, but has been stated so many times, is the brilliance of Star Wars, of the Star Wars franchise, is there is so much IP packed into those original stories that you can peel them off into their own. The original Star Wars takes place in whatever a universe far, far away in some future time. Well, it's a lot of time, a lot of galaxies, a lot of a lot of characters, a lot of IP to make money off of. So it is a brilliant piece of writing originally. Spielberg, right? George Lucas, yeah. And yeah, there's just so much to be done in the future. Our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will be watching new IP from, pulled out of that original content. And part of that, I mean, it's sort of the original toy movie. The amount of action figures and just you can market anything off of Star Wars, yeah. and probably it is probably the most significant film in a lot of ways that's ever been made. Yeah. And it's, again, stating the obvious. What's always been said before is every time you watch it, at least every time I watch it, I have a new experience with it because I'm a little smarter, I'm a little wiser. I know what at some point in time in my teenage years, I knew what rebels were. I knew what that concept was. You knew what the Empire is. There are actual Senate scenes, and it doesn't look like our boring, Senate in Washington D.C., but it's a Senate scene, and it's you learn new things, and it triggers different parts of your brain every time you watch it. Right, Mary Elise?
Yes. One time you were Darth Vader for Halloween.
Oh my God.
Excuse me? When was this?
And who were you?
Queen Amidala.
No, you weren't. You were Princess Leia.
No, Emily was Princess Leia.
Oh. This was recent.
Yeah.
It was
probably
Stella was born, so it must have been around
16, 17.
Well, and Alex was a Jedi. My mom made his costume.
We're posting pictures of this on the website.
Skywalker. He was Luke Skywalker. Yeah.
If he was Darth Vader, I feel like you'd remember that.
He was Darth Vader. I'll find a picture.
Okay. Yeah, well, let's put it up on the website. But, and the other part of this is, Star Wars it makes tons and tons of money no matter what they do. So they're always going to have the ability to be on the cutting edge of technology. And now we're in this place kind of circling back around. I mean, where they can take people who aren't alive anymore and put them back in movies. And so I think this is just one example of studios putting people into films who didn't actually act out the scenes. Another one, Paul Walker from the Fast and the Furious franchise tragically died for the end. I think it was Furious 7. And they basically took Paul Walker's, I think one of his brothers, and then CGI'd his face on top of him so that they could complete the movie. And this has happened before in other movies, but also it's happened in musical performances. In 2017, in the second Blade Runner movie, Blade Runner 2049, Elvis Presley appears, okay, and he died in 1977. At Coachella in 2012, Tupac, who died in 1996, a hologram of him was put up on stage with Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. So, the technology is providing a lot of opportunities for film studios, but it's also pretty fraught with peril in a lot of ways, too. So, can you all think of any other examples of interesting CGI replications of people?
Yes, in The Righteous Gemstones.
Tell us about it.
Have you seen The Righteous Gemstones, Pete?
I have seen the clip that was sent to me in preparation for this episode.
A fantastic show. in the episode, they bring back the deceased mother, and Amy Lee, and she is a hologram.
Interesting.
And it is rejected out of hand as sacrilege. And so as they're trying to make it stop, and it won't stop, as they're pounding the hologram, the projector, would that be the proper terminology?
It was a loner, I think, is what they said. The projector was a loner.
Right. Baby Billy had the loner, and yeah, Amy Lee turned into DMX, I believe, singing "Y'all Gonna Make Me Lose My Mind."
Yes, she keeps going in and out between herself singing a religious song and "Y'all Gonna Make Me Lose My Mind."
Comedic genius.
It's very good. It is very funny. It tempts me to watch the show. But yeah, that's kind of the Tupac showing up at Coachella with Dre and Snoop, on stage. So, I'm sure that a fair amount of money was paid to his estate in order to have him appear. So, really this is something that's going to be happening more and more as time goes on. So let's get into the legal side of this. So what we're talking about here, when you're reproducing somebody digitally, we're talking about someone's right of publicity. I think we should just jump into sort of what the legal aspects of right of publicity is. So Bruce, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Right of publicity is commonly also known as name, image, likeness rights. It's traditionally a tort law, kind of akin to a property law, like a trespass, where if someone uses my face, my voice, my name to sponsor something else or to suggest an endorsement or to otherwise profit off of it, then there is a legal claim called a right of publicity claim. Now, a lot of what we talk about in Protected Thoughts is federal law. We talk about Copyright Act, which is federal law. We talk about the Lanham Act, which is federal law. Those are federal statutes that govern this, or that govern these aspects of intellectual property. There is no right of publicity statute per se. There is an aspect of the Lanham Act, of the trademark law that arguably overlaps with right of publicity, but by and large, a right of publicity claim is state specific. So, for example, Righteous Gemstones didn't have rights to use DMX's hologram or faux hologram or whatever that production entailed. DMX or DMX's estate could file suit against the production company, against the creator of that Righteous Gemstones. And if the estate or DMX is located in California, they might apply California law. They might apply, for example, Righteous Gemstones, I know, is all produced and owned in South Carolina, famously, and could go under South Carolina law. And you have a patchwork of different laws that are going to apply. And, it's a state law claim. So these things can be filed in federal or state, usually state law. But that's what we're talking about here. So circling back to Romulus, Pete, the character's name was?
Well, it's Ian Holm is who portrays the character.
Ian Holm, the deceased actor, if he didn't, or his estate or his representatives didn't give the production rights to recreate him, he might have a cause of action under a right of publicity statute.
Yeah, and I think another important point is we all carry around a right of publicity with us. We don't have to get a registration. Each of us, it's not just actors who appear in famous movies. We all have a right of publicity claim that we carry around with us all the time. It is interesting that, and this is sort of beside the point, but it is interesting that this isn't a creature of federal law. And I wonder if the advent of artificial intelligence and generative creations like that have an impact on people's name, image, and likeness. A lot of times when a major American industry is affected by a new technology, it can prompt Congress to pass a law. I don't know if that's going to happen here because, California's state law, for example, is, I'm sure, fairly sophisticated and well-developed and very protectionist for individuals who have those claims in that state. But it does make me wonder if there is perhaps a model act at least that would be promulgated or distributed.
Well, as a matter of fact, the International Trademark Association has a right of publicity committee, and I currently serve on the right of publicity committee, and our subcommittee in that group is working on model legislation to propose. Don't know who the audience is. I doubt I'll be walking the halls of Congress handing this thing around, but the idea is that, and I'll tell you, you nailed it there. The model is based a lot on California and New York. I wouldn't say that they're the most robust statutes, but they've been the most litigated statutes. And so they've been pretty well developed. Interestingly, I don't know that it's the first statute, but the most famous statute, right of publicity statute, is called the Elvis Act out of Tennessee. And what was unique to it was after Tennessee didn't have a right of publicity claim that extended past death. So, which is circling back what we've been talking about all along. And so Elvis died, and, there's no name, image, likeness. There's, his voice, his dance, his move, everything about Elvis is the Star Wars of music.
Yeah, he's
in a
iconic.
lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so everyone was using it for their own commercial purposes. And and famously from Memphis, Tennessee. And so the estate there lobbied for it, and the legislature came through and passed an Elvis Act that gave certain limited rights to deceased characters. But they do, not every state does. So,
yeah, in the forum, we've talked about this before. The forum it can be so incredibly important to this whole discussion, and is hotly litigated. Where if you've got the subject matter of the lawsuit dies, you may wind up in a state where you don't have any protections after death, and so it can turn into a huge fight among the parties because you could dismiss a claim if the state doesn't recognize rights of publicity after death. You got a motion to dismiss and claims done. So in the movie industry, this has become a recent hot button issue because in 2023 there was a huge strike in Hollywood, and it involved the Writers Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, SAG-AFTRA. And a huge component of that was the ability of actors and studios to be able to recreate actors digitally, and also to implement generative AI technology to create people who don't exist and create movies that you don't need actors, and you don't need gaffers, and you don't need a lot of things that, for 120 years you needed whenever you were creating a movie. So the last time the film industry saw a major strike, just for a little bit of context, was 2007 and 2008. It had huge repercussions on the movie industry. It pushed a lot of production schedules, and a lot of people lost their jobs over it as well. And I think the WGA resolved their strike in October of 2023. SAG-AFTRA, they ended theirs in December. So, Bruce, you've had a peek at some of the provisions of the settlement agreement among the actors and the writers and the studios. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, and this is my disclaimer, is I don't have the good fortune of having done a lot of this work, specifically, mostly going off some of the talking points that were prepared afterward. But obviously, in a digital age, when movies are using CGI, and let's be candid, Hollywood or whoever the production studios would prefer to use CGI because computer images are a lot easier to deal with than human beings and a lot cheaper to create than human beings. And so obviously the actors and the talent who are members of this union were fighting vigorously against the use of generative AI and other forms of technology to replace them. As you know, we none of us wants to be replaced by technology. There are categories. What they ultimately agreed to in the agreement with the studios is that there are categories of rights, I guess I would say. There are employment-based digital, they refer to them as digital replicas, which is pretty self-explanatory. Employment-based digital replicas, so an actor has a right when the actor enters into an agreement to join a project, whatever that project, that movie, that TV show is, they're going to have rights spelled out to them in their contract where the studio says, you are doing this work for us and we may create digital images and digital replicas of you during the course of this filming and creation, and we may use it again in the future. You're being asked as part of this agreement to participate in the creation. You're being scanned, and they either say okay or not. Now, the right is the right to be told. It is not a guarantee that if they say no, they're going to get the job, which is important to remember. So the union negotiated a right for all actors to get the information and to have the right to say yes or no, but it does not restrict the studios in any way from finding a willing participant, which is important to remember when we're talking about these things. Independently created digital replica is the same thing. You have an actor, say Pete's an actor, and Pete acted in the production of a film, and Pete didn't get the notice ahead of time that he was going to be scanned and used to create an image in the future. That presumably is what happened in the case of Romulus.
Yes.
I assume.
That's what I was thinking, yeah. So if you've got somebody, they're taking pre-existing material of an actor in this role, basically in a previous movie, and they're saying, we're taking it back and putting you in another movie, basically, right?
Right. I think that's right. And so obviously that deceased actor didn't have the rights under this agreement, and he didn't have the notice. He wasn't given the opportunity. But even in that situation, the union agreement requires consent. So in that case, they can give consent, don't have to give consent. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the fellow was deceased. So who do they go to? They would, in that situation, if he was a California resident, under the right of publicity statute in California, there is a registry. So if a family says that we own all rights to this fellow's name, image, and likeness, that's great. But if it's not registered with a California there's a recording system in California, if they don't have it registered, then they don't have that right. So that's who the studio would have to turn to. The union also has rights in this, interestingly, and I don't quite understand how that works, but my understanding is if the person isn't available to give the consent and there is no estate or representative or someone else available to give the consent, they can go to the union and the union can give consent. Again, I am not going to pretend to understand how that works or why that power exists, but that also exists. And then third, the background actor digital replica is a lot like the first. It's an employment digital replica. I would say it's the different categories. There are principal actors and there are background actors, and we all sort of understand what that is. It's are you Brad Pitt, or are you the person in the crowd? Mm-hmm. And the purpose here is that the background actor should have the same rights as the Brad Pitts of the world to have notice that their features and that their name, image, it would be image probably and likeness that are being used in these productions and subsequent projects. And so the idea is that they have the same or similar rights as the principal actor. It's just it's not going to be as prominent because it could be just a person sitting in the background.
Well, and I think that there's some interesting ethical aspects to this, stepping back from the legal ramifications of this. It's just kind of interesting, maybe a little morbid and strange that we've got a person who are reproducing, this agreement pertains to living and deceased actors. But whenever you're dealing specifically with individuals who are no longer here to give consent themselves personally that they're going to appear in a movie, I think it's interesting that they don't have the control over their persona anymore. And, part of me thinks, well, is it disrespectful because then maybe they didn't want to appear in that movie. Ian Holm maybe he didn't want Ash to be reprised in another movie. Maybe they've had let's say they would have had a change in their religion in their life and they would not have been in a studio production. But because they appeared in a movie 40 years ago, the studio wants to have them back so that we can have a callback and give fan service and all of that stuff. But the other part of me thinks, well, maybe to be morbid again, you've got, it's kind of like being an organ donor. I'm not taking those organs with me after I pass away. Somebody else can use those. Maybe it's the same thing. There's still economic value to your persona, and whether it's economically valuable to your family and your estate. Certainly, depending on who the actor is, you're very valuable to a studio production. So I think those are really fascinating aspects of this discussion too.
Since you mentioned organ donation, we have to give a plug to organ donation and say, check the box, donate life.
I know I have.
Nice work.
Okay, moving on from that. Yes, I think, maybe it's something that, because this is a topic that's now prevalent, actors will be, and not just actors too, influencers, which we'll talk about in a minute, need to be thinking about this in estate planning. So is this something that you consider in your will? and your estate planning, do you want to be revived in subsequent productions? Do you want to be recreated through digital means in future acting? Or maybe you're very specific. Maybe you're like, I liked appearing in Alien, but I don't want to be in X, Y, and Z production.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe people get that specific in their planning. But we've been talking about this in the context of acting, but it's these digital recreations and AI creations are also in the scope of influencing too. So we didn't really talk about this just in our office or casual conversation, but last year Meta had created AI chatbots using celebrity lookalikes. So you could log on to Meta and you would have an AI generated chatbot, and they had partnerships with celebrities like a celebrity chef, or I think Paris Hilton was one of them, that you could chat with. And this,
What precisely is she? Is she a celebrity chef?
DJ, I think,
Sure.
I mean, DJ musician, but there was a big, push to make this fun artificial intelligence, and people could feel like they were chatting with a celebrity. I think that there's this concept that Meta was saying that people would believe what artificial intelligence tells you, and also, celebrities tell you. There's also a countervailing viewpoint that you can't actually give artificial intelligence a personality. You can just program the artificial intelligence to be what it is. Regardless, this concept of the chatbots through Meta only lasted for, I think, like 9 months or so. So they moved on from the idea of the celebrity lookalike chatbots in July, and they're now focusing on a new AI studio where you, as a content creator, can create your own chatbot. Obviously, it's going to be using some of the same technology that we've been talking about. It'll be a digitally created bot.
That is utterly bizarre to me. The idea of, are these people paying money or were these people paying money to chat with these celebrity lookalike bots?
I don't know. I don't know any of the details of it, just that this program existed and now you are going to be able to make your own chatbot. But I do know, and this isn't so popular in the United States, but in other countries, including like China, influencers that are AI generated bots are more popular than just general, like if you or I mean, I'm obviously not an interesting influencer, but celebrity influencer or...
Are there really any interesting influencers? I don't know about that.
But so the AI influencers are more interesting and more prevalent in other countries, and they're being used in other countries. But not only that, actual influencers are using AI technology to create like fake videos. So I guess they might be characterized as deepfakes, which I know we'll talk about here in a minute too, but to increase the number of hours that they have of live streaming time. So it's popular for influencers to just get on and like show people what they're doing in their daily lives, and you'll just watch them for hours.
Yeah, endlessly, 24 hours a day.
So they create these, quote, deepfake to increase their time using AI to get like a smarter fake of themselves.
Interesting. And we know that there are mechanisms out there that people can use if somebody's using a deep fake or a recreation of an individual, there are avenues that people can use to take their image down from whatever platform it is that they're on. I don't know how often that happens now. I mean, we hear a lot about takedowns being related to copyrights and trademarks, but I'm sure more and more, people can bring claims for rights of publicity for any sort of artwork or any sort of reproduction, but digital reproductions, I mean, it's just going to be rampant, I'm sure.
Well, you bring up a good point about people being able to have takedowns for deepfakes. So first we should probably define precisely what a deepfake is, which is the audiovisual content that's been generated or manipulated using artificial intelligence, misrepresents someone or something. And obviously deepfakes have been kind of a hot button term in the past year because we've seen a lot of deep fakes of celebrities and politicians over the past year. But just a couple of days ago, Governor Newsom in California signed off on AI safeguard laws, and in his law, one of the requirements is that social media platforms establish a streamlined process for users to report sexually explicit deep fakes of themselves. So the legislation that he signed is particularly in response to the misuse of sexually explicit deep fakes, but as I just said, social media platforms are going to have an easy takedown process for users to report sexually explicit deepfakes. And like for instance, a year ago there was that Taylor Swift scandal where images of Taylor Swift that were deepfakes were posted on X, Twitter, what was it, a year ago? And then there was something like 45 million views of one of the images, and reposts too, retweets, I guess. And it was only up for 17 hours before it was removed. And the original account was deleted as well as those that were reposted. But that would be an example of a sexually explicit deepfake, and then there would have to be a process now going forward under this California law where there would be a way for her to report and have easy removal.
Is that law you've just described sounds procedural? Is there a criminal aspect to it, or is there a civil claim attached to it, or is it just a procedure statute?
It explicitly criminalizes the creation and distribution of sexually explicit deepfakes that appear convincingly real and cause individual depicted to experience serious emotional distress.
Yeah, so it's a very targeted deepfake.
Yeah,
statute.
It's got to be sexually explicit. But to your point, though, there are ways that people that make deepfakes are facing criminal sanctions, criminal penalties. For instance, there's a case with the Biden deepfake from a few months ago. I guess it's longer than that. It was before the New Hampshire primaries, right? So there was the instance where there were phone calls of Biden, was that it? Where there were messages, it sounded just like President Biden, and voters were told to stay home and not vote in the primary. And I think the FTC handed down the penalty of $6 million, and the man who was responsible for the deepfake is in jail.
Yeah, criminal charges. I'm not sure if he's still in jail or not, but yeah, he went to jail. Yeah, it's serious, and I don't know if that was in New Hampshire. I mean, well, the FTC is obviously the federal governing body for communication and advertising is where they came in with the jurisdiction. So it's all of this stuff. We should also say that whether we're talking about the original topic of right of publicity and what rights exist after someone dies, or deep fakes and the use of artificial intelligence, then there are defenses to that, just like everything else. I mean, so we are now, again, these are statutory. They tend to be state by state, or in some states that don't have a statute, common law, but there typically are. If I want to show a picture of Taylor Swift in my article about Taylor Swift, as long as I give if it's a Getty photograph of Taylor Swift and I'm talking about Taylor Swift and I'm writing an article or a blog post or whatever about Taylor Swift, I can write that article about Taylor Swift that uses her name and uses a picture, a properly credited photograph, and describes it and maybe even say bad things about her, because, that's what critics do. And that's fair use of it. And so, yes, the critic is writing about Taylor Swift because there's nothing that gets hits and clicks more than something about Taylor Swift. Right, Mary Elise?
Yeah, I don't know why you would say bad things about it.
But that's a fair use, just like we have fair use in copyright, just like we have fair use in Lanham Act. Now, Pete, it's not fair use for a movie studio to use a fellow's name, image, and likeness in a recreation, is it?
Well, not without permission. And I mean, clearly, I think a lot of times the distinction is it some, or to me at least, a very clear distinction would be, is the purpose of it to educate people or to inform people? You can, whatever the blog post is about Taylor Swift, I mean, you can say whatever its educational merit is. To Mary Elise, that might be quite high, and to you and me, Bruce, it might be quite low. But you're trying to convey information about something, whereas a movie studio is putting people in movies to make money. And I think it's the same way with copyright infringement, trademark infringement. Is it protected by the First Amendment? Is it protected? Is there a defense under the statute for it? So I think really, if they're trying to make money off of it and capitalize, that's an issue. The other part, I guess, going back to the generative AI issues, the other aspect of it is the purpose of the deep fake or the purpose of recreating an individual meant to undermine the voting system? Is it meant to undermine our belief and understanding in our institutions? And I think that should have criminal repercussions to it personally, but
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do need to fact check something that I said earlier. The individual responsible is facing 26 criminal counts of voter intimidation and impersonating officials in New Hampshire, as you said, but he's currently out on bail.
Your second PSA of the day.
I didn't want to say
No,
something.
that's right. We want to, and by the time this is released, he may have broken that bail or something. Who knows?
Which brings me back to another point that we need to fact check on. In our episode 3 podcast, we opined on Taylor Swift's AI endorsement of Donald Trump, which was not a true endorsement, AI generated.
Donald Trump's AI endorsement using Taylor Swift.
I think it could go either way. But anyway, by the time that was released, she had endorsed Kamala Harris. So we just had to circle back on that. So we saw the result of what was going to happen.
So she didn't sue. She endorsed the other side.
Correct.
Another interesting aspect of this, and I realize we're kind of jumping around a little bit, but I wonder if studios are going to be implementing artificial intelligence, or let's say music studios are going to start writing albums using prompts. What's the protectability of this stuff? Can they protect it? Is there a way that they? Short answer is no. But if the way that they're going to skirt that, so stepping back for a second, if you're generating anything using artificial intelligence, it's not copyrightable. It's not protectable. But, there's a degree of if I put in the prompts and it creates a thing and then I put my hands on it and change it and alter it, maybe it is protectable.
Well, is that a derivative work then of the originally AI generated work and therefore not copyrightable still?
What if you don't tell the Library of Congress that in the Copyright Office that don't get sued?
It is interesting. I recall, and I can't credit the person or the company, but when I was at the Copyright Society meeting this summer in Cleveland, I sat next to a fellow whose company is in the music space, and he showed me and gave me a little test drive of their technology. And they have paid vocalists that they've paid to create musical sounds, and so they've lent their voice to this technology, and now they're marketing this technology to use that voice, paid musicians, but paid who knows how much and who knows what, and then who knows what the technology can do with those voices. So you have like this catalog of, I don't know, just making this up, 5-10 people, and you can see their profiles, which are avatars, of course, not real faces, not real names, but I was assured that in the background there was a person who was paid for this, and they're marketing this technology to studios to use, and I don't know precisely what the marketing pitch is, and I don't know precisely how it's going to be used, but I was sitting there thinking, bye-bye background singers.
Seriously, though.
Because, I think of the 50s, 60s music, you would have the artist, but then you would have the backup singers, in a lot of R&B music. You've got Beyonce, and then you've got the singers in the background. Hey Ya from Outkast is full of background singers.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's a delight. And I guess you don't need those background singers in a studio doing that work if this technology is available. Now it's paid for, someone paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't this bringing this full circle to Pete's point, or from the SAG-AFTRA, the strikes? I mean, wouldn't you sort of want the same things in the music industry as you would want in the theater, television industry, acting industry?
Yeah, but you're in that industry, and I'm probably, I could be wrong on, depending on what the job is. The film industry is a unionized, heavily unionized market. And I don't see, if they do, I'm not aware of it, that artists and musicians are getting together in some sort of capacity to negotiate that.
Yeah, I don't know. We're probably going to get checked by our next episode to tell us that there's some strong background musician union in Nashville, Tennessee down the road from us.
Now I could...
Dude, that means people are listening.
Well, yeah, that's good. Yeah, please write us. And maybe it's the, if you're part of the production of an album, you're the person who's actually going in and doing all the technical work for the recording. Sure, maybe there is some sort of a technical union for that industry, but I know that just in the film industry, they can and have shut down Hollywood before because the studios are trying to take advantage of writers and trying to take advantage of actors. And writers, that's something where I would be concerned. I would be deeply concerned if I were writing anything because, having generated images is one thing, and it would be difficult to recreate something or someone through AI prompts, but writing a script would be, that technology's here.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm reminded of, we've been rewatching The Sopranos, and Chrissy is trying to write a script about a monster movie in it, and even back in whenever The Sopranos was created, I don't know.
That would have been 2000. That episode would have been 2000, I think.
He tells Adriana, I bought this program and it's supposed to help me write the script. So he references the possibility of script writing software back then.
It was very poor quality, which is why he's my favorite character.
Well, and as we've seen, and I think Brucey wrote an article that's up on our website, mcbrayerfirm.com, about Google's poor AI technology in helping you write. So still, kids, write your own letters, write your own papers. Don't rely on AI.
Yeah, I think we're off the rails though from our original topic.
Well, it's interesting though. You know,
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I think it's fascinating, and it makes me wonder the people who are creating and designing this technology. I want to know what they think the benefits of all of this are, because I feel like all we've done for this half of the episode, where we're talking about artificial intelligence, is basically saying all of the evils that it brings to the world. I mean, it facilitates deception. It facilitates taking food off of people's plates and money out of their pockets. Hardworking people that are trying to, you know, I'm not really too worried about the studio execs, but the people who are, you know, the creatives or the carpenters who are building the sets, you know, those are people that they could lose work because of this stuff. And so I'd be curious to know what these companies, what's the benefit that they're bringing to the world? You know, what's the purpose of this, other than for them to make money?
You know, maybe that's something for us to think about for next episode.
Well, I guess this is probably a good place to end. So it's been a very interesting conversation. Thank you all for joining me. So I guess that's it for us. And I'll thank my colleagues, Bruce and Mary Elise, Paul, for indulging in all of the movie talk that I've been able to engage in here today. So I think it was a good discussion. Thanks.
Yes, remember, we are lawyers, but we're not your lawyers. We just love talking about the law. And we'll see you next time.
See ya.
All content copyright 2024 McBrayer PLLC. All rights reserved.